Let me ask you, John. So with the agency that you just launched, focusing on protecting creators, right? I'm going to assume your answer is going to be the wealth gap as well. Why did you start an agency to protect young men and women of color that are now coming into their own and not having somebody else take it, or even having somebody try to bring a terrible deal to the table and say, hey, you do this because us, and you gonna give me $10,000 for real? Knowing that they should be paying you 100, 150, but you don't know the difference, so you just taking anything that comes across your way.
You know, it was just about being innovative and filling that void that I believe, you know, me and my partners believed it was there. The income gap or the wealth gap, right, it's obviously race related, right? You know, what our grandparents, my grandparents were given or what was available to them, right? You know, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, what schools they were able to go to. I went to Emory Law School, but there was a point in time where, you know, people that looked like us couldn't go to Emory Law School, so we weren't able to be lawyers and educators where we were able to have a certain kind of wealth level to, you know, save and have something for our kids that came after us. So I definitely do believe it's the income gap, and it's about those resources and what's still available to us today. Our black creatives, right, our diverse creatives, like, you know, you're a photographer, you're a videographer, your parents want to hear you want to be a lawyer. And I'm a lawyer, I'm not making, you know, the most fantastic money, but if you tell your parents right now, you know, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a creative, I want to be a photographer, they don't believe that's going to be a profitable business. Well, as content continues to increase, right, the digestion or the consumption of it, we see that our creatives are making a lot of money, just quite frankly, and they're not being protected during that process, and more importantly, they're in the service practicing industry. You know, a photographer is hired to capture something, and that's great, and they're paid for that service, whether or not they own it, that's one thing, but what about them being able to create something on their own that can, you know, that they can monetize off of. Right. There was one point in time where people sat down with recording artists and said, I think you're dope enough, I like that music, I'm gonna give you $1 million to stop doing what you're doing. Whether it's selling drugs, whether it's working at Walmart, whatever have you, here's $1 million for you to focus on your craft. And here's another budget for you to be able to continue to build upon that craft. And there's a whole plan around us investing into your creativity so we can monetize off of that creativity from a 360 level. But a photographer and a videographer cannot do that, right? I can go into, you know, a bank right now and get a loan to start a business, but most, you know, creatives can't do that. And we see many of our kids these days are going more into the field of being more creative as opposed to going to the college or the master's or the, you know, doctoral route. So for me, it was just evening the playing field. You know, being able to put these financial resources behind these creators and believing in their magic, like how these recording labels believed in these other artists or musicians. So now we're signing these young photographers, these young videographers, these young creatives, giving them monetary advances, giving them budgets to create, helping them protect their brand. And guess what? They own all of their content. You know, so there's a lot of labels that own, and you know, I understand the business, I'm a music attorney, but we want them to own their content and own their stuff at the same time still helping them build. So I love the space that we're in. I do think the income gap is, you know, the main issue, more money, more problems, but at the end of the day, more money, more opportunity. My mom still works 3 jobs, you know, and I'm here with 3 jobs myself to this day. So, you know, when it changes, who knows, but
it's the Jamaican in him. But I think that we got to go back to, as an asterisk, the spirit of Atlanta. Yeah. And John will be able to speak to it better, that you can't forget the trailblazer for creatives in that recording space was CeeLo Green, who said, I'm going to do this album. I don't have a label. I'm not representing any record company. Right. And the song went #1. Right. Following that model was Nelly X, who went and bought that. He bought that undercarriage for what, $400, and took it. So that creative space is also synonymous with independence. So I'm not waiting to be signed by Sony and Arista. Right. So these artists have had to find innovation because they can't go on tour. Ain't no Summer Jams 21. Yeah. I mean, so you got to figure out, okay, how do I get people, you know, Erykah Badu in the middle of the pandemic charged people $1 to watch her midnight concert, and 300,000 people bought it. Right. And she never left her living room. Right. Right. Yeah, that changed the whole game, that I don't need to get an insurance agreement. I don't need security. I ain't got to fly to Atlanta. So I made $300,000 at home at midnight with no backup dancers, with no band, me and my banjo. So I think that whole industrious notion is really the wealth creation.